Hello, everyone. Happy Saturday. Welcome to our Fold Academy, the first Fold Academy of the new year, so I can say Happy New Year. We're so excited to present this particular workshop. I'm JL Richardson. I'm the executive director at Fold, and we have Mari Mendoza here to talk about navigating the writing process in partnership with Firefly Creative Writing. So before we start, just a few housekeepings. First of all, I'm going to, if it's not already, open the chat. Attendees can chat with everyone. And that way you can say hello. And you can tell us where you're from. You can tell us where you're joining from. Just a little chance for us to get to know those of you who have joined us on this Saturday. Yay! If you're watching this back on demand, thank you. This workshop will run for approximately 1 hour. It'll include about 15 minutes of question and answers at the end. If you have questions during the workshop, please let me know. Just making sure that the chat is to attendees can chat with everyone. Hello. Just gonna make sure everybody can actually chat. So there. We are using Zoom auto captions. So if you want to turn the captions on and use them, you may see some inaccuracies and inconsistencies when we actually post the recording, and this will be recorded and posted to YouTube and emailed out to all of you who registered. You will see corrected captions, but the live captions are a little bit unpredictable. Um, I just want to also, before I bring in Mari, mention that the Festival of Literary Diversity is happening April 26th to May 3rd. April 26th to April 29th are entirely virtual. So we're virtual, you're virtual, everyone's virtual. It's a really amazing, incredible experience. We have trivias, we have after parties. It's a really unique way to connect. And it's sort of like the culmination of our Fold Academy season. We will have an event called the Writers Hub where you can actually jump into Zoom calls with publishers from across Canada. So please mark that off on your calendar, April 26th to April 29th in particular for virtual, and mark off April 26th from about 3 to 5 p.m. There's that Writers Hub that's really special. That is enough of me. I am going to bring in Mari Mendoza now and give you a little bit of her bio. And Mari has lived a full life of writing, from completing her first book at age 6 to getting her honors BA in English literature. We just found out that she went to school on the street that I now live. So we just missed each other at certain points of time, but glad to be in the space with her now. She joined Firefly as a writing coach in 2020 and has since given countless writers permission to give their writing more tenderness. I'm excited to hear about that. Over the last couple of years, she's written historical fiction, YA dystopia, and hundreds of 100-word stories about her life. Please join me in welcoming Mari to the club. Thank you for being here. And if I haven't mentioned already, please check out Firefly after this too.
Thank you, JL. I'm so happy to be here and see so many numbers popping up on the screen. 75 participants and counting. Amazing, amazing. So lovely to see you all and see where you're all joining from in the chat. So, one of the things at Firefly that we're really passionate about is helping writers find their own path through a very messy process of figuring out your writing project and what your creative life looks like for each particular project. And that looks different for each person. And so today I'm going to talk us through some of the stages of what that looks like according to us and help you figure out where you find yourself kind of on the map. So I'm excited to start and lead you through this. Next slide, please. Okay, perfect. So, before we continue, I want us to invite all of us to just take a moment. Maybe you're rushing into this session from a busy morning, and I just want to invite us all to just pause. Just feel the land under our feet or under our chair. I want to name that I'm running this webinar today from the traditional lands of the Anishinaabeg, the Attawandaron Neutral, the Mississauga, and the Wendat. I also want to acknowledge my own lineage and journey to this land that we call Canada. I was born in Guatemala, which is home to the Maya people and has been for centuries. And as a child, became an unknowing settler in Canada. And so there's a deep and painful history of genocide, but also resiliency in both these lands that I've lived on, and I want to name that. And at Firefly, we as a team are committed to grappling with the discomfort of this colonial legacy and to decolonize our spaces and our processes and to explore ways to work in solidarity with Indigenous peoples who call this place home. And that's not just words for us. So every season, as a team, we take actions to support Indigenous groups in Toronto and beyond. So from September 2025 until this coming September, so for this year, we're working to raise $10,000 for an organization called Indigenous Youth Roots. And all the money that we collect for them is going to be used for grants for Indigenous youth to fund a creative project of their choosing. Whatever, kind of creative project that they might want to do, whether it's make a documentary, write a novel, whatever it might be. And so we are very deeply excited to be doing this with the IYR. And I will put a little link in the chat to this fundraiser if you're curious to check it out. Um, I want to end with a quote by an Ojibwe Canadian author named Richard Wagamese. I'm sorry. He's one of my favorites. I have read all his books. He's amazing. And I'll put this quote in the chat as well because it is so good. He says, "All that we are is story. From the moment we are born to the time we continue on our spirit journey, we are involved in the creation of the story of our time here. It is what we arrive with. It is all we leave behind. We are not the things we accumulate. We are not the things we deem important. We are story, all of us." And what a perfect way to start a writing session, a writing webinar when with this quote about all of us being story. Yes, his unfinished novel made you cry. Oh, yes, I haven't read that one yet because I know it's the last one that I'll ever have, and so I'm kind of saving it. But yes, thank you everybody for your attention. Let's dive in. Stage one. So I'm gonna walk you through 7 stages. And as you're listening, I just really invite you to just think about what this looks like for you as it's looked in your creative life so far. And as I said before, there might be a different kind of process depending on what project you're at, or you might find that you have kind of like a little mini loop through these stages. But as we move through this, I really hope that this is just going to give you some clarity about the confusion that can sometimes happen when we don't realize we're in a certain stage. And just kind of being able to see the map a bit more bird's eye view, I think really helps us to have a lot more compassion and understanding and tools to move through, especially when we get stuck. So this first stage we call hibernation. And this is a time where we have no ideas and we don't even have ideas about ideas. It's a time of deep rest. So this is something for you to ponder. Is hibernation in your life something that you enjoy? Is that very uncomfortable? Do you worry about getting stuck there? How long can you stay in hibernation before you just can't take it anymore? What I love about this stage is that it's a radical way to redefine procrastination and really give that stage a space as being part of the process and equally as valid as any other stage of the process. So I love this stage because it gives us invitation not to feel shame and not to be in thoughts like I should be writing, I should be working on my project, or I should be whatever. Those shoulds can be really, really hard. So I want you to just think about what some hibernation activities you've done when you've stepped away from writing and what that has been or could be. So this could be things like, going to the museum, taking lots of naps, quiet walks, looking at the snow, looking out your window and daydreaming. Um, there's lots of research too about the alpha waves, which are those like really slow waves in our brain and in our brains. And that's the place where often we get new ideas. And there's like science around why this is important to creativity. But in order to get to those alpha waves, like we really do need to slow down and like make space. So hibernation is a beautiful stage, I think, to be able to really um, nourish the soil that later will produce. This is not about production at all. This is just about rest, deep, deep rest. So I would love for you to use the chat to answer this question on a scale of zero, meaning absolutely no, zero, no joy, to five, absolutely, this feels so joyful, or I have felt joyful in this, or I can imagine the joy of this. How does hibernation feel like to you? What's this stage? Where is your joy scale from zero to five? Even if you've never been in this stage, just imagine it, feel it in your bones. Lots of threes. Okay. Yeah, just kind of, Somebody says critical. This stage is critical for them. Amazing. Eight. So Lori says eight. Love it. Okay, yeah. So a gamut, right? And that's so normal. We are all different and we're going to have different answers for absolutely every single stage. Beautiful. Oh, I'm an introvert and love it. Yeah. Yeah, personality can definitely make impact on this stage. Beautiful. Okay, let's move to our next stage, which is we call pollination. So, this stage is where inspiration begins to bloom inside of us. This is where ideas come, often unexpectedly. You have that experience where you're just, in the shower and then you're like, oh, what about this? Or you're taking public transit and you think of an idea or a character or the first line of a poem. And just the world is just full of delight and openness. And you're just like one of those little bees going from flower to flower to flower. Like the world is abundantly creative or a place for inspiration. So here this stage we have to think about like what brings us to this place. Is there something in our habits, in our daily structure? Is there something when that's going on in our life that allows us to step into this stage? Often what people say is like taking in other people's creativity, like going to concerts, reading, being in nature, time alone, or being in community. It can kind of be either way, but usually there's something for each of us that kind of brings us to this pollination stage and lets us lean into it. And again, what I want to point out here is that the creative process is bigger than words on the page. So far, we haven't had any words on the page. This is where it's productive to wander around an art gallery or go for a walk with your camera and take photographs. Like, this is that stage where we are embracing being creative beings, but aren't actually creating anything in this moment. So, again, in the chat, on a scale of zero to five, what's your joy scale here? What, thinking about this stage, how you've been in it or imagine being in it, how does this feel? Bo says it's my default stage, five going 10. I love how people are breaking the chat scale or yeah, lots of tens, a couple of ones. Mm-hmm. Exciting, inspiring. Yeah. It's overwhelming. Yeah, Ava, totally get that. It's very overwhelming because there's so many flowers. How do you choose? It can be too much. Absolutely. Both are very true. Perfect. Okay, next slide, please. So we've talked about two stages so far, which both do nothing, right? And there's no word count at all so far. So thinking about hibernation and pollination, which of those two stages you just want to pause for a second and think about? Would it feel good to embrace hibernation right now or just take in a lot of delight? So just pick one of those two. We're going to do a tiny bit of writing. Again, this is very optional. Um, you'll have the recording. So if right now in this moment you don't feel like you're in a space to capture your thoughts, that is absolutely okay. We're just going to take a quick 2 minutes to excavate a bit about what might be true for us in these stages, in either of these stages right now. But you're welcome to pause and rewatch the recording and really sink into the writing. At Firefly, we always say first thought, best thought. So let's just try it and see what intuitively we know as we use this little writing prompt and just keep going. So write this season, I need to, and just keep going and see what comes to you, what is true for you in this moment. You can write in a notebook, computer, totally up to you. Okay, so to wrap up your sentence, maybe you just got a few words down. That's all right. You can always revisit this once you know the whole kind of all the stages. Once you understand the big map, you can always go back and think about any of these stages and do a little bit more exploration writing to figure out what's true for you right now, where you're going. All right, let's head to stage 3. This is a very popular one. Next slide, please, JL. Perfect. So this is called idea. This is where we don't go from flower to flower, we pick the flower. Something is assigned to us. It can be a little light bulb moment, it can be a tiny thing that just starts to get bigger and bigger. A project or a goal or some kind of vision arrives, and we might not know at that point how we're going to see it through or what even the thing is, but we have this like feeling of being compelled to see it through. So that's the big question to ask yourself in this stage. Okay, I've got this idea. What do I need in order to see this through so it doesn't fizzle out? This is a really, really good time, a really good stage to create some structure for yourself. So that might be joining a writing group, taking a class, telling a friend what you want to make, working with a writing coach, doing something to kind of build some structure to help you not let that little tiny flame get blown out. Also, I want to name that there can be grief in this stage because we're going from pollination to idea. So, if pollination is a little bit like dating lots of people and going on lots of first dates, and idea is like choosing somebody you're going to be in a monogamous relationship with. So, you're saying no to a lot of other things to say yes to one thing. So there could be some sadness, there can be some regret, there can be some like, oh, but what if this other thing? because when we drop into an idea, we have to commit and let everything else go. And it can be hard to let go of all those other dreams, all those other possibilities, all those other what ifs. But it can also be really exciting because it's new, it's shiny, and you don't quite know what it is. So let's go in the chat again. 0 to 5. What's your joy scale in this stage? Thinking about being an idea. Okay, lots of higher end numbers for this stage. Funny. Oh, we're seeing a weird slide. There we go. Okay, yeah. Sometimes 5, sometimes 1. Very valid and fair. Yeah. Terrified, but still a 5. Great. Some 4s, some 8s. Oh, it's so funny. People are going way outside the scale. That's great. If that's true for you. Relief. Great. The certainly the certainty feeling is a 5, but the grief is a 1. Yeah, beautiful. Well said. Um, the other thing about idea is that we might have like fear of missing out, right? Like, but what about those other ideas? What about those other pieces? So, okay, let's go to chaos, which is stage 4. Now, this is usually a very divisive stage. Often people absolutely love it or absolutely hate it. There's some people in the middle, but generally, this is a very divisive stage because this is where we've gone from a seed to the universe. Like the idea expands, it becomes unwieldy. It's exciting, but it's borderless. It's huge. We have no idea how this is ever going to land and come back down to earth. So, the big question in this stage is how do I deal with chaos in my life in general? Is that a comfortable thing or is it a challenging one? If it's comfortable for you, then the work becomes how do I make sure to actually move through this and actually get to the next stage, which is production, instead of just kind of sit and swirl in the chaos because we're very comfortable there. On the other hand, if this is a challenging thing for you, if you don't really do well with chaos, how can you have enough supports to actually sit in it long enough so that your project can gain creative steam and not, again, shoot you back into idea or hibernation or something else because it's so scary, it's so big. So those are kind of the big polar opposites of what chaos might feel like. I'll just share really quickly my take on this. So I cannot deal with chaos in my regular life. There can be no clutter on the counter. Everything needs to be put away. Chaos is not great for me in my regular life. But in my creative life, I love it. I love this stage. I love the mess. I think of like, if I was a painter, this is where I'd just be throwing paint at the walls and just like rolling in it, and just like having no idea what I'm making and not caring at all, and just doing whatever idea comes to me next and to move it forward and maybe throw in another plot idea, another plot twist, another character. Maybe it's a genre bending thing. That really limitless space for me is hugely joyful, which is interesting because that's not true in my regular life. But for some people, they coincide. What's true in your real regular life or non-writing life, I should say, might also be true for you in the creative world. So this stage can be the big fight for a lot of writers where we can feel out of control. We start to think, oh my goodness, no one else is going to contain this for me. It's on me. Um, and when we have an idea, going back to idea, it's often still stuck in common tropes or stereotypes. The idea is kind of in the box in some ways. But when we hit chaos, That's really where we start to break out of conventions that we might have taken in without even realizing it. So this is where it's something new, something no one's ever done before or done in a different way. Um, so it can be scary. It can be scary. It can be very freeing. It can be all of the things. And a lot of people jump ship here. There's no way to read or make lists to get yourself out of the chaos. You know, there's no, you have to just kind of push through and get deeper into the chaos in order to get to the other side. So 0 to 5, 0 being absolutely no joy in this stage, to 5 being I freaking love this. Where are you? Put it in the chat. Erica, I love the exclamation mark. 0. Yeah, Jocelyn, absolutely. 99. I love it, Jolie. 0 and 5 simultaneously. Haley, yes, absolutely. That, and isn't that so indicative of the stage? It's called chaos, so that absolutely makes sense. A -5 for Sarah. Yeah, absolutely. This, everything you're saying, I hope you're seeing that it's so represented in this chat, in this webinar. And, you know, if you polled 100 writers, you'd get all these answers as well, because it is, chaos is a thing. Okay, so again, we're going to jump into a little writing just to take a moment, a pause to reflect, a moment to gather your thoughts and put some words on the page. Or if you don't want to write, just to sit with the question. Again, we're going to explore 2 stages in this, right? We're going to explore idea and chaos. So pick one. Pick one, whichever feels alive right now, whichever one, whichever stage you feel like you just want to sit with for a second. So if we can have the next slide, JL. And I've got 2 options for you. So just depending on which stage you kind of want to check out right now. So if you want to be thinking about idea, use the first prompt, which is I want to explore my idea about, and just sit in the idea. If you want to lean into the chaos, I've got a prompt for you, which is if I lean into this chaos, and just see what happens. Again, just a quick 2-minute write or a 2-minute pondering, just to see how you feel, what else you want to say or think about these stages. All right, 2 minutes. Okay, just a couple more seconds to write that final word or two. All right, wonderful. If you need a little stretch, feel free to take it. We are like in it now. So, stage 5, if we can go to the next slide, is about production. So this is the stage that most people are familiar with. This is the thing you see or you imagine writers do, which is sit at their computer or at their notebook and write. But let's think about creative projects in general. This might not be writing. So it might mean, buying brushes and picking out your paint colors, buying bulbs for the garden. It's some kind of like beginning to create. The chaos begins to shrink and it becomes form. There is form, there is structure, you can start to see the shape of this thing. So this stage, it's really important to think about how to nourish yourself so that you don't burn out. This is the butt in the chair stage. This is where you have one sentence and then you write another sentence and you do that again and again. And so it's very repetitive and it's very time intensive. You might move through hibernation, pollination, and idea and chaos all together might still be shorter than the amount of time you stay in production. Not always, but it can be a really long stage. And that means sometimes it's boring looking at your computer and putting words again or looking at your notebook. So maybe here, what we need to do is take a little loop, a little side quest back into pollination to gather some freshness to fuel us here. So this might be where, again, you immerse yourself in community and you take a small group workshop or you make a little writers group. You have some beta readers, you work with an editor, you start reading bits of it at open mic just to kind of see what's resonating for people. You get a really good pillow to give you back support. You start to work at coffee shops just to have a different wall to look at. You get people to check up on you. These are all the kinds of things that can be really helpful to kind of continue to propel you through this stage. So, again, from zero being not at all to five being very joyful, how does production feel to you? 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. Beautiful. Fours, fives, all over the place. One to five. Yeah, absolutely. One if it's not flowing, 10 if it is. Yeah, absolutely, because production can look really different for each of us, or even just from day to day, from project to project. Like if you're in production and you know exactly what you're doing and it's just about doing it, you've got a good rhythm, you're going, it's peachy. If you're like trying to pull out every single word out of you and it takes so much effort, much less joyful for sure. So the type of production, the way it's coming out really impacts the joy scale. Time is always a consideration. So when you don't have the time, it can be difficult or it can also feel joyful because you snuck in this 20 minutes of writing or you skipped this other event to sit and write a little bit or on the bus or whatever. So, yeah, but sometimes when you're trying to squeeze it in, the joy scale goes down because you want a day to spread worship on your writing, and instead you're like, I only got time for a quickie 5 minute write instead of 2 hours or whatever. Absolutely. All of these are true. Basically, every single stage, everything you're saying in the chat, I'm just saying yes. Yes to all. Let's go to our next stage, which is refinement. So, this is when we finished a first draft. We have put the final period, and we now see that we have a something, whether it's a poem, whether it's a memoir, a novel, it doesn't matter, but we've made a thing and it's got shape. And now we begin to edit, to cut, to change, to move things around. This is where you might ask for advice, get someone else's eyes on your pages, move things around. The end starts to feel in sight. You can see that light on the other side. So, the big question for us in this stage is how can I approach this stage in order to end up with a product that I'm deeply thrilled with, something I'm proud of? What does refinement mean to me? Again, this stage can be dreaded. This stage can be boring because there's no maybe excitement about what the characters might do next or what, might happen or where it might go. Or it might feel really exciting because you're like, I can make this better. So everything from messy draft one on is refinement. For some people, it's one second pass, one draft two, and it's done. For some people, it's like 52 drafts. Or for some people, it's just one going through all the things. Sometimes it's a different draft for different purposes. There's a million ways to look at refinement. There's thousands of books just on this stage alone out there. It's complicated. It's not simple. And another thing that makes this stage complicated is that because the end is in sight, we start to think about what comes next. We start to imagine the audience that could be here. We start to imagine other eyes over our shoulders as we're making these changes. Suddenly, we're not just us and our project having this little dance. Suddenly, there are gawkers, and that can add a lot of pressure. That can add a lot of inner critic voices to kind of turn up. So, this is again another stage where it's very common for writers to jump ship and say, done with this project, just going to run back into hibernation or idea or pollination or anything else because it can be scary, but it can also just feel really satisfying to kind of like polish. Imagine polishing that silverware and it's like, oh, look what I'm doing. So you might feel any of all the feels in this stage as well. And again, I keep bringing in community because that really can be the lifeblood that gets you from A through Z in creative projects. So this is where, a writing group can really be helpful when you're in your inner critic or an editor, a coach, beta readers, all of the things, whatever it might look like for you. Okay, so on a scale 0 to 5, where are we? How do we feel in terms of joy stage for refinement? And maybe you've never gotten here, and that's okay. Just imagine thinking about your finished A draft and now you're ready to move things around, to change, to edit. 0, 0, Kai. I hear you. This is not my favorite stage. I can happily live in production. In fact, I can be in chaos and production till I die. I'm okay with that. I'm happy to start 2,000 manuscripts, 5 million poems, and never edit them. I'm good with that. But I know that I have to move through this stage in order to get to the stage next that we'll talk about. And, and it might not be what you expect, but we'll get there. Yawn, Mason. I tend to switch back to hibernation instead of refining. Yeah, that's very, very common. As I say, that's very, very common. And sometimes that's necessary. Sometimes we need a pause in order to allow us to let that marinate, let that settle, let the dust clear, give us a bit of a break. So when we do come back to it, we have fresh eyes. So that can be absolutely a part of your process and can be actually the perfect thing to do that isn't um, hiding. It might be exactly what you need to go into hibernation. Okay, let's do another little write. Last one. So choosing between production and refinement. Again, I've got two prompts for you. The first is in order for me to write and edit, I need so choose either write or edit, actually, or my writing or editing self would love. So pick either of those phrases and just keep going with it and trust your hand. There's no way to do this wrong. Just see what words come for 2 minutes. All right, start to wrap up those couple of words that you're on. Maybe you end dot, dot, dot here, and this is something you'll pick up again and keep writing. Great. Amazing. We probably didn't have enough time to gather all your thoughts fully, but just a little couple breadcrumbs that you can return to later. That's the idea of these tiny writing prompts. Okay, we're going to talk about the final stage now, which we call birth. And it's very clearly called birth and not publishing because at Firefly, we believe really strongly that birth means letting our idea out into the world, finding an audience, and that can look very, very different. So, questions to ask us in this stage for ourselves is who is my audience? How does my project want to be seen? So I love this idea of kind of giving our project its own identity and kind of like asking it, like, what do you want? You know, you have created this thing and let's give you a moment to have your say. And maybe that's, you know, just one person reading it to one person, sharing it with one person. Maybe it's something else. And so the question for yourself here and for you and your project to talk about together is what's the best, most exciting way to move this outward? It's been in us and kind of on the page and now it's time to birth. So there's so much more besides publishing, although that is an option as well. So I've got some ways that we can move work out into the world. So I'm going to put a couple of these options in the chat for you. And then your handout that will come to you after this session has, I don't know, 50 options for you to just think about and kind of maybe expand our ideas on what birth looks like. So I'll just read a couple of them. So one would be read at an open mic night. Firefly, we host a couple of these a year that are free. So if you want to get on our mailing list, you can come and read at one of our open mic nights. Something else could be like leaving a copy somewhere public, you know, on the subway, on a bench somewhere in a coffee shop and just watching what happens, mailing it to a friend in a beautiful envelope, making a voice recording of you reading it, recording a video of you reading it, either sharing it or tucking it away for a future you, all kinds of things. I've done probably all of these. My favorite was mail it to an address where I used to live. So I actually mailed it to my Brampton address. What we were talking about earlier, JL, that yeah, so I mailed it to my old address when I was in high school. And I didn't put a return address on it. Like I didn't want them to write me back. I just wanted them to have a copy of my poem that, you know, was kind of thematically linked to when I was in high school and lived there. So, you know, there's a lot of things that you can do that will give you birth and allow your project to be birth that is in your control because you know the publishing industry, if you're going traditional publishing, is very subjective and not at all in your control. You can't actually control whether or not you get picked up by Penguin Random House or not. Of course, there's self publishing and there's lots of other options. Absolutely, those are valid. And if that's what you want to do, beautiful. But I want us to really expand our idea of what else might be possible and really just see what's true for you. And you might not know. You might not know until you're at this stage what that might be for your project, or it might change. You might have an idea of what it is in stage one, two, three, four, five. And then as you get closer to this, it could change. So let's think about birth. What's the joy in birth for you? Imagining it or feeling that you're there? Is it a 0? Is it a 5? Where are you? Yeah, some 5s. Lots of 5s. I saw a 0 though. I see a 1. Mm-hmm. I get postpartum depression so bad. 1. That makes sense. That makes sense, right? Like birth is that. It can be it can be that way for sure. Um, yeah, these are all very valid things. And I guess, JL, if we can just skip the next slide and go right to the end, I just want to do my like tiny little bit of closure here in terms of trusting your instincts and how important it is for you to get support, whatever that looks like, at every stage. And believing that you can find your way through with the supports that you need. And if that means doing a little mini loop back to a previous stage, then that's what your map looks like. That's what your life cycle looks like. That's great. And I think the biggest thing from, working with hundreds and hundreds of writers over the years in small group workshops and in one-on-one coaching is really just knowing where your joy is, where your resistance is, and what to do about that is a big part of the equation. There's so much great support out there. At Firefly, we love to walk this path with you if you want us to. But whether it's us or some other supports or other organizations, the best thing for you, I think, will be if you find ways to not do this alone. And I also want to say that the world needs more diverse voices. So, um, while there's nothing wrong with sitting in any of the other stages and really taking your time, wow, will it ever feel good to get to birth and share your words and have them land? So, thank you so much for your attention and your wonderful comments in the chat. And I'll turn it back over to JL for questions.
Thank you so much, Mari. That was really, really helpful. I love talking about the writing process because I'm such like an efficiency nut. Like I really like thinking about it at these stages too, because for me, learning how to be more gracious with myself, learning what each stage looks like has been really like important to improving my writing. So I really appreciate you breaking it down in those categories. For anybody who's watching, you can put questions in the Q&A box and we'll answer them. I wanted to talk about one question that came within the chat. There's a question about was from Trevor, I think. He was asking if you can like refine within the editing stage versus just like a stage at the end that's quote unquote for refinement. And I wondered if you could speak to that.
What an excellent question. So, my answer is you can do whatever you want. This is your map and it's your roadmap through it. What I will say is that sometimes writers get stuck when they do that because we're putting the gas pedal and then we're pushing the brake, and we're putting the gas pedal and we're pushing the brake, and we can stall out. So, not to discourage you if that's what feels right and makes sense, with the caveat that often, or sometimes, I shouldn't say often, sometimes when writers do this, where they write and edit as they go, it's fear and resistance of just really leaning into the process. So the answer is always absolutely do whatever you want and what feels true, but the the bigger answer is make sure you know why you're doing that. And if it's resistance and if it's fear, then attend to that and move through in order to kind of get through the stages. But yeah, great question.
I agree. I call it the saw approach where you're like because when I would start, I would work on chapter one and chapter two and chapter three, and then I would go back and do chapter one, chapter two, and try and like perfect. And it was constantly like this instead of ever getting to the end. And something Helen Humphreys recommended is to write in layers.
Mm.
So I would always write like all the way to the end and just skip a problem, make notes about the problem, and then in the next layer address that problem. So I was always working to the end instead of always having like six great chapters and no ending, which is my
Absolutely.
favorite delay.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's one that is a logistical question that I'm going to ask because it's pretty quick, which is about the quote from the beginning about "We Are Story." Um,
Hmm.
if you did you post it in the chat?
I
Maybe if you
just
could
did
just
again, but I
okay.
will post it one more time because I mean, we can never get enough Richard Wagamese.
There is never enough Richard Wagamese in the world. I was really fortunate enough to meet him before he passed, and just like such a lovely time, honestly. So yeah, I can't say enough about quoting him. I'm trying to put something in place. Okay, so there's another really great question about, they're all great questions, but um, this one is about, they're kind of, well, okay, I'm going to ask this one because it's kind of related to what we were talking about before. The greatest challenge and pause is the chaos. For someone with anxiety, this is also where the research is done. What did Colombia look like in 1954? And then the question that I think they're asking is how does one move through and be satisfied enough with the facts to do the writing?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What I'm hearing in this question is wanting to really make it not be chaos and wanting
Mhm.
to have a structure to the chaos and put a box around it so that it stays tidy in some ways. And yeah, so yeah, I mean, it's kind of an impossible question because
It
chaos is
really
an
is.
impossible stage. But yes, I think to that end of like, I'm researching this, but you can research forever and still not have it all. Somehow making peace with, do I have enough to let this swirl to kind of project me into production and start writing this? Or maybe you get enough to actually start writing and then you realize you need to go back and do some more research and kind of dip back into chaos.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, that can be, I don't know if I fully answered that, but that's the thought that's
No, I
coming
think you
to me.
did. And I think you did even when you were talking about the stall and start. It's the question of like, you can take time to research and then you can take time to write. But when you try and do both at the same time, when you commit to start writing and then you're still stuck going back to research, the question is like, why? What is
Why?
what is keeping you? Is it this fear that you're going to do something inaccurate? Or, I think asking the question about why, once you've done the research, you're still like, because you can make notes all the time and go back. You can highlight things to go back, but like, what's making you not able to continue, if that's the issue?
Yes. And one more thing I'll say about that too is think about if you're bringing in the word should at any point in this. So are
Mm,
you saying to yourself, I should do more research before I'm expert enough to write about this? I should know everything about 1500s North America before I write this novel or start. So all of that is just inner, not just, is inner critic and fear and resistance. And like those are very real and valid things. But once you know that that's what that is, then you can say, okay, part of me wants to know everything about everything or everything about this thing before I start or before I continue. But what if I just like soothe this part of me and actually know that I can always research more, but I have enough to start, or I have enough to write this, or I can put a big, blank in my,
mhm.
and I do this when I'm writing. I
Uh,
put square brackets and I'm like, research this later. Keep
Something goes
going.
here.
Something happens here.
They do something. Now they're at the next place. I don't know what else they're gonna. Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Dorianne has a great but difficult question. I'm just going to preface it with that. She asks for tips dealing with competing guilt. So, guilt for not writing enough. So much advice is writing every day. That's garbage, in my opinion. But whatever. Competing with guilt for taking time away from your family, housework, even if it's only once a week. So, that.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Um, oh, just my heart goes out to this writer
Yeah.
because that's such a hard thing to overcome. And I
Mhm.
really hear that, and that can be really, really deep for a lot of people and a lot of writers. And I've definitely worked with writers who really have like a real deep guilt around doing this for themselves. And I just always come back to this is what gives me life. And
Mhm.
this is where I feel alive. And my family and my friends and my people deserve a glowing me
Mhm.
instead of a wrung out me. And especially in terms of housework,
Mhm.
that is something that I think is never going to be worth it, at the end. Whereas living a creative life and bringing joy and desire and excitement and whimsy and play and sadness and all the emotions and just like really being a human, it's just so worth it. It's so worth it. And not at all to diminish. It's not as easy as being like, well, okay, I just won't be guilty. There's a lot of, you know, deep work to do. Often that can
Yeah.
include some therapy or working with professionals to kind of help you do that. But I'll just say, like, it is worth doing the work to not have that guilt.
I also want to speak to the writing every day because I think that when you spoke about the different stages, it's very clear that writing is not always sitting at your table. And so this thing that you have to write every day in order to be a writer is like a really important thing, I think. And you like feel free to disagree with me. It's a really important thing to combat because
Yeah.
you can sit at your table and not get much done because it's not the right stage to be sitting at your table. So like, at your desk. So just really be mindful of what writing every day might look like is just like going for a walk. It can look like going to a writing event, going to a festival, doing a workshop like this. Like it doesn't have to be doing the project, is the one thing I'll say. And there are
Mhm.
certain stages where, and I'm going to read this next question and combine to this, is where writing every day is really helpful because it's like about continuity in the process
Mhm.
of editing. So I think knowing which times what it needs to be is like just being flexible with yourself, and that's a way to get rid of the guilt too, is to understand that you are a writer and you're existing in the world as a writer and you'll do what needs to be done at whatever stage. But
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I think that the one of the biggest disservice that society has done for writers is that idea of like you have to write every day
yeah.
or you have to like aim to make money off your writing. Those are the two biggest things that I try and combat at all times, at all. Fight.
So Joe asked a question about what are some clues we can pay attention to that let us know we're ready to move to the next stage, chaos to production, for example.
Mm. Yeah, I think you almost can't help it. It just starts to
Mm.
happen a lot of times. Chaos to production, yeah, you almost can't help that one because you'll be in the chaos, but then you'll be like bringing scenes together or starting to put pieces together and making charts or kind of things like that. So you'll just naturally start to be into production, or you'll find that there's less things to figure out and you're just kind of ready. But I think also just asking yourself the question. You can always ask yourself the question like, okay, is that enough? Am I ready? Is the project ready? Is the work ready? And reflection is always going to help you to know where you're at. And you can always try. Like you can always dip a toe in, start, and if you're like, "Oh, actually I'm not," then, go right back to the previous stage. So especially when you're thinking about pollination and idea, you might pick that flower, start, getting into that and realize, actually I wanted that other one and go back. So there's no being stuck once you've entered a stage. They're fluid. Feel free to kind of move around if you step into one and it's not the right time. You'll know pretty quickly, I think.
And when somebody said it in the chat too, sometimes like inside of a stage, you're kind of going through the stages. So like even you can be in chaos when you're refining. I think that's
Mhm.
how like there's sort of stages within stages as well. But yeah, I think when you're ultimately ready to move from one to another, you kind of can't stop yourself. Like
Mhm.
you're doing refining. You're not thinking about the idea, but
Exactly.
there's a question as we wrap up now about where people can send questions after. I know Firefly was so gracious in connecting about this workshop, so I just wanted to ask you about how people can get more, find out more, since we didn't get to all the questions.
Mhm.
What would you recommend before I share some things from the Fold side?
Great. Yeah, I would recommend getting on our mailing list. We send out a newsletter every couple of weeks that has some kind of writerly advice, things that as a team we've been thinking about, grappling with, exploring. So it's a lot of these kinds of things that we're talking about, and there's such gems in those newsletters, and it's just like a really beautiful way to kind of be in these questions and think about it. They often have questions for you to ponder in those newsletters. So I would say get on those. We don't spam. It's every couple of weeks, so not that often. Um, So yeah, I would say do that. And folks are very welcome to email me as well. Um, you can go on the Firefly website and see my contact information. It's all there. And I would be happy to answer any follow-up questions that come up from this.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Mari. I'm going to share this information as well that you shared at the end of your workshop, which is the Firefly Creative Writing website, as well as their socials and where to follow them. I also want to mention our next workshop that's coming up, which is author branding. So, talking a little bit about the business and how to do that from a design or just like a prep perspective. And then I have a couple bits of information, but I want to be able to put the links in the chat. So I'm just going to share and then put the links in if that's okay. You can subscribe to our Fold newsletter. I'm going to put the link in the chat. Again, we send out newsletters specific to Fold Academy, or you can subscribe to the larger Fold newsletter as well, which comes weekly and keeps you in tune on when registrations are open. And we also have an attendee survey and that you can fill out to help us improve, to contribute to the topics that we might do next year, our next season, because it'll start in September. And then you can also donate to the Fold. So I am going to stop sharing there and pop these things into the chat. And if you are able, please do so. So this is our subscription. You can subscribe to the newsletter, and that's this one. And I'll do the other ones. This is our survey. That should be good. We really appreciate a lot of the topics that you see come out in the following year will actually be things that came from chats from people who filled out the survey afterwards. So please take a moment to do that. On that note, that is it for today. Please, in the chat before you go, let Mari know something that was really meaningful to you from the workshop. It's always great, I find, to leave the workshop presenter with some indication that you were there, you listened, you gained value. Um, Part of the reason I have to apologize to Mari before we go because I was late on slides because I was on my phone typing quotes that you were saying. I was like, this is so good. And I'd be typing it and you're like, JL, are you there? So thank you so much for breaking down those stages, for saying all that. It was a really informative workshop for me, and I appreciate that. And some really great feedback from the team there as well, from those who are joining us. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. This recording will come out later this week, so you can watch it back again. You can use it as a reminder. You can use it as an encouragement, and follow up with Mari if you have further questions. Take care, everyone. I'm gonna wait till these comments finish. So you can go, Mari. I'm gonna wait awkwardly while the comments all go through because I'll be able to copy them and share them with you afterwards. Or you can watch them because that's what I would do.
So
I'd watch them
joyful.
till they stop.
It's so joyful. Thank you, everybody.
Have a good one. Okay. Have a good one. Bye, guys.